Thank you for joining us for day 2 of blooloop's V-Expo and the first of ProSlide's panel's 2 sessions. We have some great panelists lined up, and first let's introduce the topic. The water park industry is constantly changing and evolving, and recently transformational water parks are beginning to take center stage. Their immersive theming, use of intellectual property, innovative ride designs, and strategic park planning are changing the perceptions of what a water park is, along with raising the bar for everyone in the industry. To delve into the subject today, we are welcoming ProSlide's Aaron Wilson, a Vice President of Business Development in Europe, Jeff Janovich, Senior Vice President of Strategic Accounts, Mitch Petty, Director of Master Planning, and our special guest, Nick Neuman, CEO of Water Technology, Inc. He's responsible for project development for WTI, water park planners, designers, and engineers, headquartered in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thank you.
So today we're going to start out with a little conversation about Lalandia, and we're going to start our discussion today with Aaron and Mitch. Our first question is, Lalandia in Denmark has a really unique business model that's unlike anything we've seen here in North America. You both work closely with the Lalandia team. Can you shed some light on the uniquely successful aspects of Lalandia Soddenver?
Sure. Lalandia is a great example of a very successful mid-sized indoor water park in Europe. They've had obviously great successes at Lalandia Billund and Lalandia Rodby, leading to the development of their third property in Sondervig, set to open in 2022. Their continued success is built on a proven business model, as you mentioned, which essentially operates with one central entertainment facility, with the Aquadome being the main attraction there, and a number of holiday homes that are located around the area. Typically, the Lalandia model is to build these properties in tourist regions. So Billund was built obviously in Billund, where the first Legoland was developed. With Rodby and Sondervig being more surrounded by natural elements, beachside, for example. The model is the business model is essentially based on holiday homes that are located around the Aquadome, and it's marketed as a family-friendly / investment opportunity. People are able to purchase these holiday homes and pay a small management fee per year. And while they're not being used, the Lalandia property helps to manage the rental of those, which obviously helps for the owners to generate income when it's not being used. And from the Lalandia development standpoint, particularly with Sondervig, they were able to help finance the development of the infrastructure through the pre-sale of some of these homes.
So something I can add into that is, the overriding theme of this whole conversation is really the future of water parks. And there's not very far you can go talking about the future unless you're starting to look at the present. And certainly very, very relevant, particularly in the European market. Very often we're getting projects that are one-offs. You've got Europa-Park, it's got one-off. You've got a few other projects around that are one-off. But the influential factor of Lalandia is that they're doing multiple projects, and I'm sure I don't have firsthand knowledge of what their future plans are, but I think that they're going to be developing projects across Europe in the future. So that's something that we're looking at as far as what's influencing the direction of our industry, and something that we're all very excited about.
Well, I think Aaron, when you say they have the rental homes, what's the name? What do they call those? What's the reference name for those? The chalets,
homes,
but
I believe.
The holiday homes, yeah. And it's 20 years ago that was a common model in the U.S. If someone was going to finance a park, indoor water park, they would sell condos or some sort of home to raise money and have that initial capital. That really is not a method we use anymore. And so I love the fact that it's able to be sustainable in this development approach. I think it's really cool too to look at the way that the Lalandia group has taken the indoor water park and some lodging destination, right? As we look at indoor hotel water parks, we think of a classic hotel. And to me, it's such a kind of out of the box of the model to have these holiday homes. What a different experience, right? To show up, have your own place to go to. I think that developing that sense of ownership and, like, dare we say, sense of community or vacation allegiance, I think is really, I think it's motivating for developers to look at how do we change that model in the future? How do we take it to the next level of guest experience?
No, absolutely. And just to add, I guess, to, as Mitch said, to tie this back into a little bit of the water park side, right, and how they've developed a brand identity, right? So in terms of their business model, they've continued to stay true to that business model. And Nick, you mentioned that that's something that's sort of strayed away from it in the U.S. However, it's obviously grown to be a very successful model for Lalandia. Yeah. And we know that in the case of Zonderweg, that they had record sales of all of their units in just a few months, and it might even be less.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a really good story in that sense. And in terms of the water park development, they've obviously focused on a family-friendly tropical theme, and with the incorporation of spas, which is something that's very specific to the European market. And they've also tied what we call at ProSlide the Tornado 60, which is the big 5-person or 4-person iconic funnel, which has become in Great Wolf Lodges in the U.S. It's become sort of a the link between the Great Wolf Lodge and this Tornado 60. Lalandia has sort of taken that tradition on in Europe, where the Tornado 60 has come to be the iconic brand image for their entertainment on site. And so what's interesting is to see how that Lalandia in Zonderweg, and I can't go into too many details, but how they maintain that same consistent image, but how they plan to evolve that for bringing it forward into the future. And so there'll be some really cool inclusions into the new design that won't have been seen at any other locations at Lalandia or at any other park yet.
Fantastic. I think one of the comments you make too is, the family friendliness of it, but also then, leading in towards some of that European culture, having some additional, spa type elements or making sure that the parks are fit to location. And I think that's, as we talk through some of these different projects today, it's such a trend to making sure that it's not just a wash, rinse, and repeat type program or master plan, that we start talking about parks of the future, trends of the future, as developing either brand of your own, a theme of your own, or entertainment experience of your own. Understand your guests and how you serve them. So that's great. Those are great points, Aaron.
And talking about, its influence is this notion of water parks being an amenity to driving and improving other sectors of business, so increased lengths of stay, occupancy rates, just a differentiation in the market. This is a really pivotal role that water parks are continuing to play and continuing to grow into when it comes to differentiating projects and resorts from each other. And when you're really looking for that competitive advantage, you're in a very competitive market with other resort offerings. If you include water park amenity space, it's something that can really help drive revenues and increase your market share.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on to question 2 and shift into iconic indoor water parks in Europe, namely Europa-Park's Rulantica. Jeff and Nick, this park has recently established itself as a world-class indoor water park. Can you share some of the ingredients that contributed to Rulantica's overwhelming success?
Well, yeah, absolutely. The Mocs have built an iconic theme park with Europa-Park that's been around for over 40 years, and built it with a unique character all their own. And they wanted to do something similar for the indoor water park. They've been thinking about doing an indoor water park for many years, and wanted to create a unique theme that was, that could be relatable more to the European market, rather than trying to import sort of the standard, tropical, pirates or palm tree type of scenario, and have come up with a very unique storyline, sort of a mythical Scandinavian style water park, but done it with high quality materials, high quality design that's unique. The shape of the building, most indoor water parks in the past have typically been more sort of square rectangular buildings. This is a very unique shape, sort of triangular, creating multiple levels in the park to really create different viewing opportunities. So it's a very immersive environment with the storyline, and then bringing in a strong collection of unique and iconic and innovative rides that have never been, for the most part, never been seen in Germany or Europe in general, to really create an environment, a facility that is very inviting and used to drawing people from across Europe to the theme park. They're trying to do the same with the water park.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the first thing you say too, just like, Europa-Park without a water park, just like what a boss of a park. I mean, it for sure in my book, one of the leading parks in the entire world. Just a beautiful experience to be there. So for the Mocs to take the theme park and their hotel and their hospitality offering and now include water, like the vision of that alone to me is it's a big challenge to make sure you develop a product that's complementary to the rest of the resort. Looking at, I think one of the curious things is too, we look at, and this is kind of even coming back from the Landia topic, looking at developing parks, to me, there's a very, indoor water parks throughout the world are not a brand new thing. I mean, the world has spent a lot of time in spas and bathhouses and different indoor natatoriums. But to me, I think there's a very defined model of a North American-based indoor entertainment water park, a high thrill, high ride package water park program. Taking that program and then translating it to different parts of the world, I think is so important. And to me, translating it correctly, the proper translation of it. And to me, Europa is not only from the size, having a unique theme, which they're absolute masters of doing, but and this is something that we talk about quite a bit, the fit and the finish, the shape of the building. So there's so many different unique, boxes that are ticked on their list.
That's right.
I think really show us like this is a palette of paints that really do make up the future of water parks. The one thing about the Europa-Park that I find quite interesting, and I know Aaron, you brought this up quite a bit, is how do we take this entertainment water park model and translate it into something that's culturally, that's regionally appropriate. And we just had a conversation with someone recently, and the conversation was around, what's a luxury indoor water park? And it was an interesting conversation going back and forth. But I think looking at Europa-Park, having the ride package they have, the pools and water attractions, and then mixing that in with some spa. They do have some spa elements. The offering of food there, the Europa-Park offering of food.
Very high quality, absolutely.
High quality swim up. They have a beautiful swim up bar area.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, there's so many pieces of this water park that are not just straight up awesome, crazy water park, but speak to this luxury essence of a water park, which I think, looking to water parks in the future, like 100% worthy, top of the list, Europa-Park, like setting the trend in a major way.
Yeah, and even you mentioned a lot of great things there, Nick, but also even just as simple as the seating. A key element for that park was making sure that they had enough lounge chairs for every guest, so that the experience, every guest who comes in can have a lounge chair. They limit the capacity, so they're never overcrowding it. And all those elements, the swim-up bar, the pools, the outdoor area. I was there experiencing the outdoor swim-up bar in the middle of winter. And there's not many places you can experience that, have that type of experience and the quality of the food. So it's every element. It's the whole package that creates that really unique experience that sets this indoor park apart from virtually any other indoor park I've seen around the world.
And what that leads to is, you know, they've been open now for a few months, and they're
Almost a year, Mitch. It's November of last year they opened.
it's incredible. But they're seeing like way over the top lengths of stay, right? People
Yeah.
are staying at that park all day, which is not typical for indoor water parks. So with that increased lengths of stay, obviously comes the increased per cap spending, and it just
Yep.
feels a great business that they have. But you know, my observation of Europa-Park is, particularly Rulantica, is it couldn't be more Europa-Park. You know, they just
Perfect.
That's it.
highest quality, you know, amazing finishes. But, you know, we're talking now about the future. But what I see in this park is talk about a watershed moment, particularly in Europe, where somebody's delivered this amazing project, and it's a shot to the arm to the rest of the industry to say it's time to wake up, because
Yeah.
to really differentiate yourself and truly be, you know, part of the, you know, the European but also globally influential projects, you got to deliver on the scale like Europa-Park is at Rulantica. And they didn't do it just with like, you know, do a nice small, you know, water park with really good finishes. You look at the others, you know, the other competing parks in Europe, and they're half the size, you know. So
That's
these
right.
guys said, you know what, we're redefining what an indoor water park is. We are Europa-Park, and nobody's going to come at us, you know. So we're going to do this. That's like the water park for 25 years from now, and they're still going to be way out in front of everybody. You know, I don't remember the exact stats, but it's 10,000 square meters or higher inside, and plus outside space, all done up with amazing finishes. You know, you look at a typical Central Parks project, and they're 5,000-6,000 square meters. So, you know, as a comparison, they entered the market like way above everybody else, raised the bar at a level that, you know, quite frankly, it's surprising, but it's what you would expect from Europa-Park. So kudos to them, and kudos to their like vision and that sort of risk that they took to do this project. And it's sort of going to redefine every water park in Europe. There's nobody that's considering developing a water park in Europe or really in the world right now that's not looking at Europa-Park to see what they did to sort of prove the concept.
That's
So
right.
when we talk influence, and we sort of do the list of like most influential parks, you know, certainly Europa-Park is going to be very, very high up on that list.
Well, Mitch, you talked about influence, and what was interesting was when Europa-Park was looking to develop the Rulantica, they looked to what was happening in North America. They visited, you know, parks, the Kalahari and Great Wolves and those types of parks to see from a ride perspective what was happening, because really Europe had not, you know, built indoor water parks with the ride program that we're seeing now. And now it's funny to see Todd Nelson from Kalahari, who's very influential in North America, and is watching what Europa-Park is doing as well. So you're sort of seeing that crossover between, you know, the leaders in the respective, you know, parts of the world, and seeing what each other is doing. So I have to, you know, be curious to see, you know, Todd's next move, if he looks at doing another project, how much Europa-Park may influence the next Kalahari.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
It's a global game, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
You very much have regionally influential parks, but then you have this top tier that are really influencing the whole world.
Yep.
And so you talk about our clients from China, and what projects are they looking at? Our clients from Europe, what projects are they looking at? Our clients from North America, and what projects are they looking at? And it's the Kalaharis, Great Wolf Lodge, Lalandia, you know, American Dream, Rulantica, all the ones we're going to be talking about today and tomorrow are these like superlative projects that are like, those are the ones that if you're considering a water park and it's going to be a business that's going to fuel your future, become familiar, you know, become familiar with these parks, because they're the ones that adhered to some of these great fundamentals, and they figured out the way to make the magic work. And if you want your project to succeed on a similar level, or if you want to develop something that's going to make that list of most influential parks, you got to go back to school and learn about what the guys in the past did. And you know, certainly talk about Kalahari. Well, they paved some serious road for people to come in on, and the same is true with Great Wolf Lodge. And you learn about those projects, and it's not all wins, right? You know, they did some things wrong too that we learned from. Well, when you talk about influence, it goes both ways. The really great things, but also we learned from some of those things that, you know, maybe we wish we could have it back, you know, and do a little mulligan, do it over, and try again. So there's a lot of those things, and you know, here we are, you know, sitting in the current day in this industry that's thriving, you know, we're in these strange economic kind of weird times now with COVID going around, but the optimism that we all feel is amazing. You know, you look at what's coming out of China and all of Southeast Asia, they're going gangbusters. You know, they're not going down for anything. And I think that that's going to be the continued trend as we sort of emerge out of this time.
I think you make an interesting point too, Mitch, when you talk about some of the sizings of different parks. I mean, indoor water parks very much in their history have been regionally located parks. And, you know, you start looking at sizing from, you know, 3,000 square meters up to, you know, 6, 9. And within a region, you know, you and I are the same page. I always advise a client, we have to size the park based on your market, right? So, you know, we want to be diligent to a business model. But to me, the thing is that the curious part, the trend, I think there is for sure learnings on both sides back and forth. But this emergence in the last decade of the super park and parks that are not just regional, but parks like Europa-Park is a destination in itself. And now to add this park at this level, and you know, to look at the way the Landia, those are a little more regional at the moment, but you know, still within that European region, being able to draw a large crowd, have the holiday homes. So to me, there is definitely a trend, a golden thread that weaves through all these pieces of how these parks are being developed. And I think the learnings are important regionally and for the super parks.
Yeah. And just to build on that, Nick, I think it's that the leading water parks all looked to the other leading water parks when they started to develop, right?
100%.
I mean, Christoph at Siam Park traveled around and rode all the rides, visited all the leading water parks at the time. The Universal team at Volcano Bay, they did the same. The Mox at Europa-Park, the Landia, you know, all of these leading, whether they are regional leading or globally leading, they all look to others, and that what was the pinnacle at that time, and built from that, right?
100%.
So, and it's great to see in our industry where there's a lot of sharing between, you know, Jeff, you mentioned how Todd Nelson at Kalahari, you know, was discussing with the Mock family, and there's a really great community that's existing in our industry where people are really freely sharing ideas and things. And that's great. I mean, there's a really sense of closeness in our community, right? Where there's a lot of respect between the different parks, and there's a lot to be learned.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. A lot of these guys, the Nelsons and others, paved the way, and like you said, Nick, some of them made, you know, not perfect decisions as they went along, but they grew and improved, and they're open to share with the new people, the new developers coming in. Even though you'd say the Mocs are not new, but they're new to water, and you know, giving them the insight as to, you know, what worked for them and things that could help improve their business. And it's just great to see that collaboration across the industry.
Absolutely. And history,
100%.
The history is still being written. You know, we talk about those guys from 15, 20 years ago doing their projects, and you know, that brought us to this point today. Well, the history is still being written, and these projects today are what's going to be fueling the projects of the future. And you know, you look at the size of them, the scale, the finishes. You know, we're talking heavy hitters today when we have, you know, Lalandia and the things they're doing. We're now talking about Europa-Park. You know, we mentioned Center Parks. These are all projects that have been massively influential in our lives every day. And, you know, there are going to be people listening into this conversation that are considering developing water parks. And these are all going to be names that become familiar to them. So who are those ones
100%.
that are going to be those guys today? And Christoph is another classic one. You know, you go 12, 15 years ago, well, he was just learning about water parks, and now he's like an industry icon, right?
Yeah.
There are people that we're talking to today that in 10 years are also going to be industry icons in their own fields. So it's exciting, you know, for me to think, gosh, these are the projects that we worked on. You know, we did them together. They're part of this global landscape and are just so influential in what we do. It's, you know, we're very fortunate to have these lives and to work this job and be part of this super cool industry where we're providing entertainment to so many countless millions of people. And being part of this panel to talk about, well, what's going to be the future? It's very exciting, and certainly these projects are the ones that we're going to continue to be kind of turning the page in the book to say, there's Rulantica. Remember when that happened? That changed the world.
Perfect. Well, after all that great conversation, we still have another great park to talk about, and that would be American Dream. DreamWorks Water Park at American Dream is the biggest indoor water park in America. Jeff and Nick, since you worked closely on this project, can you highlight a few things that make this park a best-in-class destination?
Well, I'd start off just with the sheer size. You mentioned it's the largest in North America. It's one of the largest in the world. And so just from a sheer size perspective, it's very unique and very influential. And then take that along with a very powerful mix of iconic and record-breaking ride attractions in the park, and then a very immersive amount of theming with the DreamWorks theming around each one of the ride complexes, borrowing on well-known movies and characters to really create an engaging water park environment for most, certainly for young families, but for kids especially. And they were certainly looking at what they did, the 555 group, what they did at West Edmonton Mall back in the 80s, and they were way ahead of their time back then. When you look at that park and how influential it's been, and that was the influence for them in terms of how could we better that great work we did back then, and they certainly did a great job with American Dream.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, going, pivoting from Europa, Rulantica to American Dream. I mean, there's so many things that we can highlight here, but to me, it's a bigger case study, which we can talk about for quite some time, of the emergence of this super park that is regional, but it has a much larger draw. I mean, American Dream, in terms of any development, location, to me, that they've really found a sweet spot right where they at with having such a large, patron, a large population around them, and having great access to the park. We understand the indoor water park as a business model, most typically as a hotel indoor water park, and as Mitch was saying earlier, using those two to drive that business model. With American Dream now, looking at a park that's mixing, water rides. They have the amusement park next door, a huge retail, food, beverage. So there's a huge component here that, to me, that it's really a new model. And yeah, I mean, the size of it, like, for sure, super park. I mean, the indoor wave pool, their surfable indoor wave pool, is 60,000 square feet on its own. This is the size of some indoor water parks. And I will say, absolutely true story too. I mean, there's not many water rides that I won't partake in. But when last time I toured through before commissioning, how tall is your speed slide there? Because as I was walking up and I actually looked and to see where that speed slide, that ProSlide speed slide was, where the tower was coming off, I will say I got a little pit in my stomach. Like, I mean, it's like totally, what is it, like
142 feet high. So it's a world record for an indoor, one of the tallest in speed slides in the world, but certainly the tallest world record beater for an indoor water ride.
And you were there,
Yeah.
You had your chance.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately at that moment we weren't in a position to ride it. But I will say, and I'm not just pandering to the group here, but it's like, sometimes you'll be at like a theme park or a coaster park, and you'll see a coaster of height or speed, and you'll have a physical reaction. You'll think, geez, you get kind of nervous. And I can't think of many water slide rides where I've looked at and thought, geez, that's going to be something. And that ride really did elicit that feeling. And I don't just bring that up to share a personal story, but I think it definitely speaks to the trend. It speaks to this idea that the guest experience it demands more. It demands a higher thrill.
Yeah, you
It
want to be
demands-
wowed. You want to wow the guests. Like if you're wowing someone like you who's been in the industry and who's seen a lot of different things in the industry, and if you can wow someone like that, think of the typical guest coming in there, and when they take a look at that ride and look up, and whether it's a speed slide or even for the kids on their own smaller rides or the play structure, they're going to be wowed with every element
100%.
of that park. And that's they certainly done a great job with that. All around. And unfortunately, we haven't been there ourselves. I've been involved in the project since the very beginning and been there during construction, but have not had a chance to see it since it's been completed other than photos and video. But it's certainly, the park, just fantastic, exceeded our expectations in terms of the final outcome, and can't wait to get there. And everything I've heard about the speed slide, Nick, just so if you do go back, you got to go down it, because I've heard it's super smooth. Even though it's tall and it's fast, it's really smooth. So
I'm riding it for
you'll
sure.
be well treated.
I'm riding it for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm riding it for sure. I'm riding it for sure.
Talking superlatives at that park, it also has the world's longest indoor hydromagnetic coaster.
Yeah.
So it's
That
not
is
like
that's an awesome ride.
But it's like a whole nother caliber of park when you're talking just coaster. But this is an HM, like linear induction motor, indoor, goes around the entire perimeter of the park. It's spectacular, so it's like superlative on top of superlative really makes it stand out. And market position, right outside of Manhattan. There's probably, 40 million people within a couple hours of that place, I imagine. With all the greater metropolitan areas that are located around there. So right on I-95, just you drive past it all the time. And one of the things that always comes to my mind when we talk about American Dream is the anticipation. How long is the project in development? And it's been sort of milestones all along, and
That's right.
victories and kind of some staggering defeats along the way. But there's some of us that remember the sort of Xanadu years. It must have been 20.
Well, it was about 15 to 18 years, I think, that it's been going on.
So it's been kicking around for a long time. And, I keep going back to thinking about the people that are going to be listening into this conversation. And there's going to be a bunch of them that can remember when, oh yeah, I was involved in that project, back in the day. And, so it's exciting times to see it finally open after all these years, and all the sort of industry news that we've been reading about it up and down over the years. It's finally open, which is amazing. And talk about poor timing for those guys. It's like so long to fight this battle, and then to have one more thing thrown at them.
Literally, they were literally days away from opening in March, but when everything got shut down. So it was just the last sort of what else could happen to these guys that came up at the last minute. So it's exciting to finally see the park open, after all this time and all these trials and tribulations of the project. And we can't wait to share it with the world and do it with hopefully not just the photos and video, but getting people out there once they can start traveling. Coming through New York, it's a great hub destination. It's easy to get in there and check it out. And it, like you said, as a super park, Nick, it will be influential to other more regional style parks in terms of what these guys have done as well. And one thing I find when you look at a lot of the indoor parks, and it's just a trend of what they have done is putting a lot of rides outside the building. But with American Dream, just the sheer size of it, they brought virtually every ride inside the building, which is unique to create that real wow effect. When you walk in, you see everything. You see all the attractions from from the Madagascar to the hydromagnetic coaster to the the Shrek rides. It's all there. So it's really to create that wow and pull the people in from the mall and and have them enjoy a great day.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point though, Jeff, too, that I think is important, that for this conversation, for those of you tuning in, it shouldn't be lost in the fact that if you're developing a property or a hotel and you want to add an indoor water park, you're like, well, I can't develop a super park. Like, I think it's quite important to say that the super parks of today, and Mitch, you've been saying this too, the super parks that we're talking about now and that are on the boards right now, I mean, these parks are influenced by the parks that came before them. But then even looking at how these super parks now, the impact of these parks, a lot of these learnings, a lot of these approaches or philosophies of design, how we integrate rides, looking at the guest experience, VIP experiences, taking that value proposition and offering a deeper offering. These definitely translate into parks that, I guess, of different sizes, right? Of more regionality. 100%, you can take these. We can learn from these parks and translate these back. So I think if anyone's listening, I don't think it should be lost in the fact that, well, if you're not developing a quote unquote super park, I think maybe one of the takeaways are that these super parks show us trends in the market and the industry that are important for us to keep tabs on and to learn or become a student of. Mitch, you're kind of saying, right? You want to become a student of the industry and learn about these parks and understand them, and you have to be there. I propose we do this podcast next time from one of the parks, right? We can get the GoPros going and ride down together.
Right when you're ready to drop down the speed slide, Nick.
Yeah, maybe we'll make sure that's editable.
No, I think what we've talked about American Dream and how great it is, but we haven't really spent tons of time on the IP that's involved in this project, and that is something that's also going to have an influence on our industry. There's no doubt we're seeing more very recognizable IP coming into the water park, and we see Cartoon Network, we see Disney doing their things now. It's American Dream with the DreamWorks property. We've got Kung Fu Panda and Shrek, and these are characters, household name type characters coming to a water park. And it's one of those moments where I start to think, well, I wonder how this is going to influence the next water park project, and are we going to see this emergence of IP being layered in, or those sorts of that prove the business model of whether it's worth investing in that.
And that's a super interesting point, Mitch, because you had historically there was always attraction parks, right? And now we call them theme parks, right? It's really evolved into where a lot of themed and IP has become an essential component almost of a lot of theme parks, globally, but it hasn't fully transferred yet to the water parks. Right. And this, as you mentioned, there's some really good examples that exist. And I know more regionally here in Madrid, where I'm based, there's Parque Warner, which is Warner Brothers themed theme park. And they also have a water park there called Warner Beach. And there are a number of attractions there that are themed, and a number of attractions opening next year that will be themed using their IP. But I think for sure, the DreamWorks example at American Dream is going to be really interesting to track, to see what sort of what kind of impact that evolution could have on in general the water parks, and are we going to start seeing water theme parks become more of the norm?
I think so, and even we talked about branded IP, whether it's DreamWorks or Warner. But with Rulantica, going back to Europa-Park and Rulantica, they created their own IP with that storyline. They didn't rely on an established brand, but with their creative team, Mock Solutions, they develop their own story, and it goes right. It starts from the theme park. They have an attraction that starts the storyline with Snorri. And when you come to the Hotel Kronosar, you're already starting to get immersed into the story, into the mythology of Rulantica, and then transitioning into the water park. It's a full immersive experience, and so it's not just putting some window dressing on a couple of rides. It's really creating an environment, an entire immersive environment that translates throughout the resort. And I think that's to be one trend that Kalahari started doing it with the Kalahari Resort. You're immersed from the lobby and all the way through, and it's taking it to another level.
Yeah, it's all about differentiation, right? And sort of making the most out of your business and the market you're in. If you look at again, we're sort of trying to learn the lesson of history to see what's fueling the future. And when you look at the water parks of the past, well, the theme was it was a water park. What differentiated that entertainment from the market was that it was a water park. So that was differentiation enough. now we're seeing increased competition, increased need to sort of stand out.
Stand out, yeah.
There's more global influence on what's expected out of a water park. And now we're starting to see emerging out of that, you know, IP and recognizable characters and, you know, all of these things that are going to go into driving visits, right? All of this is about the business and driving visits and bringing people to your park because it's something they already recognize. And for sure, Rulantica is a great example. You can create your own IP. You know, nobody knows the story of Volcano Bay until you get there. And you know, there's probably a more elaborate backstory than most people know, but it's this immersive environment. And, you know, Disney has done the same in their 2 parks. You know, and there's more examples out there like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon has dabbled in the water park world too. So there's a lot of places you can go and sort of be splashed with green slime by, you know, at a Nickelodeon park or see SpongeBob there. And those are things that, you know, remembering our guests are these little kids that want to sort of hang out with their cartoon character friends. So those are the things that drive people to those parks. And I see it as being hugely successful, certainly a trend we're going to see more of as we move forward.
And just so you know, Mitch, just for the record, any place I go aside from Nickelodeon parks, I don't want to be splashed with green slime. It's the only place I find it acceptable for a green slime splashing to occur. I really try to avoid green slime every other place besides Nickelodeon parks.
There's the water guy, the water quality guy talking.
Yeah, how do you filter green slime?
Yeah,
I mean, it's
at Sunway they splash you in green water. I don't know how they do it. It must be some.
It's a very precise Pantone color. I will tell you that.
Okay. Don't know how it's done, but it's certainly part of what's happening right now. I love this.
On that green slime moment here, I guess I just wanted to thank you guys. That was a great conversation, some great information and insight into what's going on in the transformation of the water park industry. I want to thank you all for participating, Jeff, Aaron, and Mitch, and of course our special guest, Nick. And to all of you,
thank you, my pleasure,
for tuning in. After this is finished, we'll have a short Q&A, and we'd love for you to join in and filter through your questions to the team. Thanks again. Have a great day, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.